Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of VICast. I'm Hong Sen.
I'm Cheyenne.
And I'm Dylan.
And today we are going to talk about a rather interesting topic. So today we'll be taking a look at transportation apps and how transportation can be made more accessible with the aid of technology.
Right. So I think, as people with vision impairment, we're all in the same avenue. We do have different pain points and, in our journey of transportation. Right. So, each of us probably have our own level of experience in terms of what are the support we need when we travel independently. I think it's very important to kind of note that, this is how a person with people with vision impairment travel, whether is it independently or maybe they have some level of assistance. I think it really depends because you travel independently versus you travel with some assistance, the result is kind of different, right?
Yep, definitely. And of course, one thing to recognize is that, technology itself can actually make this whole journey a lot easier, because with the help of apps, we have a clearer idea of where we are. We have easier access to navigational directions, and these are all really helpful to us on a day-to-day basis.
Right. And I guess on top of that, it also depends on how you travel. For example, do you travel a white cane? Or do you travel with a guide dog? Right. So these are probably things that sort of does matter because ultimately, when we take things like public transport or any form of transportation, some of these things does play a part, right?
Yep, very true. So I think what we'll do today is we'll share our personal experiences with using some of these apps itself and maybe just, do a quick description of what our journeys usually look like.
Right. So let's start with Cheyenne first.
Okay, so personally for me, when I travel around, I mostly take buses. So I would use this app called Alight to help me track my journey and alert me when I'm going to get off the bus. So how does it work, right? So I have to first set my location, like which bus stop am I boarding the bus and which bus stop am I going to alight. So I have to set this beforehand. And so once I board the bus, I have to press the start ride, which they will start to track my location. So you have to enable the app to track a location first, it's by GPS. So what happens is that when you are about to reach your destination, it will notify you twice. So the first notification is when you're one stop away from your destination. So it will alert you and you'll be more aware like when you need to alight. And then the next notification is when you have arrived at your destination. So it will send a notification telling you that you need to hop off your bus. Yeah. So this is something that I feel is quite beneficial to me because for buses, not all buses have announcements unlike MRT train. And even if the buses, they have announcement, it's not very clear. It's kind of muffled. So with Alight, it really helped me a lot. And the interface of the app is quite easy to navigate. So I'll usually use this when I'm traveling around. Then apart from Alight, Moovit, I use Moovit also for my bus ride. So how it works, it's pretty similar. You have to first set your location. So same like where are you boarding the bus and when are you alighting. So yeah, it's pretty similar. So it will notify you. But there's something different about Moovit is that it enables you to check where are you. So like for example, this bus ride is like 5 bus stops to reach your destination. So Moovit, you can check like which bus stop are you currently at. Unlike Alight, which you can't, so you won't really know which bus stop are you at now for the Alight app.
I think in a sense you probably can because there's actually a bar thing at the side and it does say whether it's like unavailable or not. Like if it says it's unavailable or something along those lines, right, that means you already passed that bus stop. Yeah, so the implementation is just not as intuitive. There's no like centralized area where you can see like, oh yeah, what bus stop is next, that kind of thing. You kind of need to swipe through the app to kind of see them. Yeah, and that's from my experience, I think. Right, so I think in a sense it really depends on your car experience and when you use the app. And I think as Shen has shared, maybe for a case it's a bit hard to find, or maybe it just doesn't work that way that I described.
That's true, and depending on when they update the app itself, sometimes some of these features get a little bit broken. Sometimes bugs get introduced because personally, I do face issues with Moovit from time to time when, you can't quite tell which bus stop are you at. So, to be fair, it usually works, right? But, just take note that sometimes these issues might happen. Yep.
I think another consideration to kind of take note of for me, I use Moovit a lot when I take bus. I think because one thing is Moovit has this internal voice thing where it will actually, at least on the iOS, I haven't tried it on Android, but basically it will, even without voiceover, it will send you voice alerts as well, apart from notification alerts.
Yeah, that's actually quite a helpfful feature. If you're just, reading the app itself, yeah.
Even when, I'm scrolling TikTok or like, I'm watching some YouTube videos, then it will just pop up to say arriving soon. Then I know I must prepare because it's the same like bus alert, right? Because it tells me 2 stops, then 1 stop, then when I arrive, right? And then since get ready, that's kind of like the period where I need to press the bell. So I think the alerting feature is a bit different, and I think bus alert is more uses for bus. I mean, it's called bus alert, not MRT alert.
Yes, so Alight only enables you to track your route on the bus. So it doesn't have for MRT trains unlike Moovit.
So basically, it's just bus stop and then your ending bus stop, right? Whereas for Moovit, you can say like, I want to go to 55 Chai Chi Street. Right, let's say I'm at GDS and I want to go to 55 Chai Chi Street. So to do that, you type in 460055, right?
Just type in the postal code.
Chai Chi Street, whatever the case may be. Right, then you can pick the routes, right? Like, do you want to take MRT, then take bus? Do you want to take bus? Depending on what kind of route they give you, right? So Moovit actually tries to cover the whole entire journey. That means from the moment you step out of their location to the end. But the issue is we cannot use the step out of the location hard until the bus stop because it's not as safe friendly. There may be other apps that does a better job, and that's something that we will discuss later in this podcast. Right.
So in fact, some people might mention that actually Google Maps sort of does the same thing, Google Maps or Apple Maps, because those apps also provide public transport directions as well. So what's the difference then? Well, my personal experience is that for Google Maps and Apple Maps, sometimes the instructions that they give in terms of public transportation may not be as intuitive and it may take longer as well. So I find that Moovit has a better algorithm in that sense. Like the routes that they provide you is usually more on point, more on time. That doesn't require as much walking or transfers. So that's one reason why I usually prefer using Moovit. And frankly speaking, Moovit's interface is also easier to navigate as compared to Google Maps or Apple Maps.
I just want to say this, Moovit sometimes when they update, it really tends to break certain things. Sometimes they even restructure the UI for a while and then suddenly the UI goes back to normal. So this is something you want to take note. Whether you're a low vision user or you are, a voiceover user who uses more Explore by Touch, you also need to take note of that. One additional thing to take note is if you are not paid or you haven't paid or you didn't subscribe to pay for a ad-free plan, right? What happens is that you'll receive advertisement. But if you have voiceover on, throughout the whole entire thing, the advertisements may only pop up once or twice. But if you don't have voiceover on and you're using as a low vision person, the advertisement pop up like every time it feels like popping up. So that means more advertisement will pop up.
True, and to be fair, the plan is not expensive. It's something like $12 or $15 per year, something like that. Yeah.
Right. So some of y'all can actually explore to actually pay for it. I have heard of clients who actually pay for such plan. I think the ad sometimes very annoying because sometimes finding the close button, right, is always an issue, right?
Yes, because personally I didn't purchase. I just used the free version. So the ad thing, it always happens and I have to close it down. So it's an ongoing thing, which is not very convenient.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And sometimes the close button is on the left, sometimes on the right, sometimes it's don't know where, cannot find, depending on what kind of ad banner that comes up. Okay, that's a lot about Moovit, right? And that's how we kind of get alerts to when to alight from buses. Or Moovit can be used for MRT also. But I think for my experience, the alert for MRT for Moovit is usually delayed.
There is hit or miss because no GPS coverage, right? I would imagine. Yeah.
Underground. Right?
Yeah. But my experience is that it still does work. It's just that it's a little bit delayed. Like, you need to reach the station itself before you know that you're at the station. So it's not going to give you like the 2-stop spot that it does for the bus routes itself,
Okay, so I think we talked about Google Map just now, right? And briefly, Google Map.
Yep.
Right. So I believe, I'm not sure if Shen have tried this before, but me and Hong Sen have tried to use apps like Apple Map and Google Map to help us to kind of walk from one place to another. I think one day we felt very adventurous. We wanted to go from some location to Ergo Tunes. Ergo Tunes is this chair shop.
I'm sure they sell chairs and golf. Yep.
I mean, they sell tables too. Right. So we were trying, and Ergo Tunes, I don't know, is it a very hard to go to place? It was a bit confusing, right, based on our experience.
Yeah, it's kind of like a neighborhood, or I don't know, is it neighborhood or is it more of industrial?
It's not exactly very near roadside, that kind.
Yeah, it's quite far in. You need to walk a distance. Yeah.
So we did this experiment where I was using Apple Maps and Hong Song was using Google Maps. Right. So how this works is that it gives us like an estimation. At least for Apple Maps, I feel like it just tells me like how many meters away. Right.
Yeah.
And then it just recalculate the route. And then the explore feature, when I take, it just tell me roughly where I am, but it doesn't give me more context. Right. So I can only use the distance as a gauge, and then because I still have a bit of vision, right? I can kind of use a little bit of my vision to kind of find out that whether am I just walking down the path. Of course, sometimes I don't know if am I supposed to, turn left, turn right, because sometimes it says turn left too early, but then there's no turning to the left, right? Because it's just road.
Sometimes the confusing part is that you walk past a turning, right? And it tells you to turn. So would it be the turning that you have just walked past?
Or after?
Or, is there like a turning ahead? And that's why I would always say for these apps to be useful, you kind of need to have some vision. Reason being, the directions are not always very detailed, not so fine-tuned to the extent that it tells you to turn exactly where you're supposed to turn.
Or rather, in my aspect of things, when I use Apple Map in Singapore, to be exact, right, you kind of notice that it doesn't kind of capture your life, like it captures your live location based on GPS, right? But it doesn't exactly compare this GPS location with what is happening in real time.
Yeah, that's true. And one more thing to actually bring up is the fact that they usually will provide directions that are more, shall we say, driver-oriented. So that's to say, it may say turn left. Okay, so you're supposed to turn left and, kind of go down this road. But imagine if there were a traffic junction, are you supposed to cross first, then turn left, or turn left without crossing? So these little things sometimes do make a difference, because sometimes if you go down, then you realize actually there's no way for you to turn back. Because imagine if, let's say, the shop that you wanted was actually across the road. You turn left and then they tell you, oh, you are near wherever. Then you realize that actually, wait, the shop that I'm looking for, the store that I'm looking for, or the unit that I'm looking for, the location in general, right? I'm not able to locate it because you're on the wrong side of the road, right? Literally.
Well, then in some sense, they'll just tell you have arrived.
Yeah.
But then you on your left it's just a construction site or something. Then you know clearly that that's not the shop, like the time we were going to Burke Kitchen and Bar. Things like that. Right.
Yeah, so that's to say, actually, Google Maps and Apple Maps, they do help us still by providing us directions, but how well we can utilize the directions is something that it's going to be a case of, it's going to be a case of how familiar you are and how much sight you have, and basically also a luck thing, because sometimes some areas are more accessible than others.
Right. And I think, one thing I like about Google Map is that at least it gives you the bearing, gives you like, which direction you're facing and stuff like that. Or, because sometimes it tell you, say, head northeast, then turn right,
Yeah, for the longest time that was really annoying, because like where exactly is west or northeast or whatever. But now, not now exactly, like it's been there for quite a while, but Google Maps does give you the bearings. Like for example, 90 degrees is east, 180 degrees is south, and 270 degrees is west. And so based on these bearings, you can kind of like figure out where to head, which direction to head in. And one helpful feature that is in Google Maps, which actually Apple Maps has it as well, is this, I don't know what they call it, do you call it live view or something?
Yeah, something like that. So I think Google Map does the live view thing better, I think.
Yeah, but
already lah.
Yeah, at least we have better results from it.
This is as of the last time I used it was 2024, okay. But this is as of recording, which is 2025.
Yeah.
So who knows, in 2027, things maybe get better. Right.
Yep, true. And so maybe let's just go into a short description of what this live view feature is. So what it does is that it uses the camera to basically overlay your directions, in AR. So let's just say it scans the surrounding and detects landmarks, buildings to tell you whether you're on track. And for the sighted, there are some visuals to direct you as well. But for us as VIs, what it does is that it actually allows us to know whether we're going the correct direction or not. Because for Google Maps, if let's say you're heading the wrong direction, it actually tells you to maybe turn around or something like this. So it's an additional layer of validation for us as we travel.
I don't remember seeing this on Apple Maps though.
There is actually, I've seen it before, but I didn't quite get it to work for me. But again, to be honest, I would say that I probably should spend more time to explore this, because I know it exists. I tried it before, didn't work out super well. And when this happens, it's kind of like, oh, well, okay, bro. Maybe not the best solution out there, right? And then look for other solutions. But I think, to be fair to it, we should give it a try again.
I think one of these days we should try out. And of course, for some of you listeners, if you all have experience of this, feel free to share with us. Because I think that's also very helpful to any of our clients as well. We have many low vision clients that say like, hey, I really want to be able to travel from point to point B to point C myself independently without caregivers support. Right?
Yeah. And so one of the things to also consider is that of safety, because when we talk about travel apps or just travel in general itself, sometimes it's pretty safe. Like if you look at Moovit, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that you miss your stop, you take the wrong bus, or things like that. But as for Google Maps and Apple Maps directions, walking directions to be more specific, it can sometimes lead you on the road or not tell you that there's a crossing if you can't actually see where you're going. And so there's a little bit of a concern there. Not to say that we should explore, but I think when you're exploring, just take these into account as well. Because one issue that I used to face last time is that it will tell me to maybe go straight, but then there's a road crossing. Right. But sometimes my vision is not good enough to see where, or even if there were a traffic light, or is this a small road crossing like a service road kind, or is this a really huge junction? Right. We wouldn't know for sure if you don't really see that well. So that's kind of an issue, I would say.
I think even as for keen users, like for me, sometimes at night I cannot see it all, right? So, at a shoreline at a certain place and I try to walk, right? Like, I don't know, sometimes I cannot find the turning, or rather sometimes like maybe I miss it or walk past it or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, it has been some situations where I walk into like a road that I was not supposed to walk, or like I walked the wrong direction. So sometimes we need to be very, very careful when we use apps like this, because it's not 100% trustable. Please don't go and turn left when you kind of feel around, you notice you cannot turn left and you still go and turn left because the thing tells you to turn left. Then, that will be a bit endangering your life, that kind of thing, right?
Right. And so the too long don't listen version of this is basically apps like Google Maps and Apple Maps, they are not exactly the most VR-friendly apps out there as of recording, which is January 2025. But that's not to say that in the future it might not improve. Right? We have tested it. You're hearing it from us, right? We have tested this, and our results kind of vary. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. So what you should treat Google Maps and Apple Maps as is just another layer,
Right.
another source of information to maybe help you, but then also don't fully trust it all the time as well.
Okay, and then I guess, in terms of transportation, in terms of getting out and enjoying life, I mean, let's not talk about, those like taking Grab, Tada, Gojek, but, more of the, like exploring what's around our surrounding. There are many apps out there that can use, that are available for us to use to find out what's around us, or maybe to get from point to point B, So, let's see. There are free ones and there are paid ones, right? So I think for iOS users, you all know this app called BlindSquare, right?
Yep, that's a paid one. Very expensive app.
Like $40 USD, is it?
Something like that. Yeah.
Right. And then there's another app on iOS, which I think it's a quite good app. I really have not used it much, but with some feedback from other clients and stuff, or other colleagues, they tend to say it's quite useful. Right, so this one I'm very willing to go and try out after recording this episode. So it's called VoiceVista. It's a pretty cool app. Another similarity or similar app to it is called Lazarillo, is it?
Yes, so Lazarillo is actually available on both Android and iOS, a pretty helpful app. So what Lazarillo does is that it allows you to find nearby locations and uses Google Maps, and I believe it has its own service as well to provide you directions, walking directions even, but I would say the walking directions not the best. Tried it once, didn't quite get me to where I wanted to go, but yeah, that's that.
But remember, your knowledge may vary because it really depends on the updates. It also depends on the location, the kind of place that you are at. Maybe like for example, right? It was probably the most difficult for me to go to SIT Punggol Coast, or rather SIT Punggol, from some random bus stop because the area wasn't like developed properly yet.
Yeah, exactly. So this does sort of affect your experience with these apps as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, the nice things about VoiceVista, Lazarillo is that they are free apps, right? These are the ones that are more popular within the community itself that a lot of users have used and have good feedback about it. Right. And even BlindSquare. BlindSquare has been very well established. It's been here for years and years and years. There is a reason why it costs so much. I mean, it's really up to the user to decide whether it's worth the price. Personally, I would say, Personally, I would say, give VoiceVista and Lazarillo a try first. And if you find that it doesn't meet your needs, then perhaps explore BlindSquare. Because I did purchase BlindSquare. I would say that it's a high quality app. It produces pretty good results, but then yeah, exactly. But then the issue, it's really to do with the locale as well, because in Singapore itself, the pedestrian directions are just not as well established as, say, in the US.
Right.
Because in the US, they have like a block system where it's easier to navigate. And so something like this is really more helpful.
Right.
But, Lazarillo, BlindSquare, not too sure about VoiceVista exactly, but these apps are also helpful in terms of knowing where you are at any given point in time. So let's say you're traveling on a Grab or taxi or in the car, and you wanted to know which road are you on, how far or how near away are you from your destination.
Right.
You can use these apps to help you to check that out as well.
That's a very good use case that you just brought up. Right. Sometimes when driver drive, they decide to pick whatever location and drive. Right? So sometimes I think it's also good for us to be able to know where we are going. Right. Just in case this driver decides to drive us to somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think we covered like the main three aspects of things. I think this journey can be broken down into three different parts. Right. We have taking bus, taking MRT as one part. Right. And then we have the walking from, say, maybe your bus stop to your home, walking from, the bus stop to a location that you don't know how to go. And the last part, or rather the last group of things, which is to explore what's around you so that you can kind of have good spatial awareness or situational awareness of where you are. And it just makes, I guess, the journey a little bit less daunting or painful as it sounds, right?
Right. It's because traveling without these apps itself can be a challenge, and that is true. Right. Whether you are someone with total vision loss or someone with partial vision loss, right? So these apps, they do help us, right? So I would say give them a try. They can play a part in your journey as you move from one point to another. But as for how much you should trust them and how much you should rely on them, that is something that you probably need to use a bit of judgment depending on your area, your neighborhood, also your site and your confidence in travel itself, because they don't really replace your eyes, as it were, right? And of course, your mobility skills still need to be pretty decent, in the sense, right? At least good enough for you to get out and about. So say using a white cane or using a guide dog, those are still primarily the main ways to keep yourself safe and on track.
Right. So some of this journey, or rather use cases, are important to look at. Of course, there are some use cases that some of these apps cannot fix, or rather there's still some problems within some part of our traveling journey, right? So we hope that, probably in future that there are other apps out there that we can try explore to see. I guess one of the biggest thing that a lot of us would be very annoyed about is, finding out what kind of bus arrives and stuff like that, right? But, there are works to make this work better, I guess. So fingers crossed, hopefully, there'll be more solutions for us to explore.
Yep, definitely. And with that, I think we have come to the end of today's episode of VICast. I hope you all learned something new or gained something valuable from our sharing.
Right. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day ahead. And of course, thanks so much for listening and supporting us.
And we'll see you in our next episode. Thank you.
Goodbye.